Well, that magical time has come again, and the news dump is back by unpopular demand. And let's be honest, there is only one topic on everyone's minds, and that is the impending arrival of The Division 2. I will be upfront about the fact that I am sticking to discussing general impressions of The Division 2 and reserving judgment on a lot of the gameplay specifics for the time being. Until the game launches in its final form, we can't really judge. Many critical aspects of the game are not even finalised, and it's one thing to show how a game runs in controlled and limited tests during the promotional phase, another to see what actually goes live. Let's face it, the servers are not going to get better during the life cycle of this product. They are at their best now, and will be shaved back on and economised as the launch date recedes into the past. I know this because Division 1. I will also be transparent that I have not played the alpha or the beta. I'm sorry, but I'm not signing a non-disclosure agreement with Ubisoft on fucking principle. So I'm going to confine this video to general issues based on what is in the public domain. On an optimistic note, it's worth reserving judgment because there may be brilliant qualities that only emerge once we have a global community actively playing the game in real life. After all, let's not forget, the community is a central core of the Division experience in a unique and inspiring way. Although the realist in me thinks that it's more likely that we will just discover that the bolt-on anti-cheat solution doesn't work for shit and everyone is running around in squads, chains spamming the goo guns while shouting racial abuse at each other. You know, like in the Division 1 basically, just using different weapons in a much smaller DZ. I think we will only start to understand the Division 2 a month or so after release, when some of the launch day bugs will hopefully be ironed out, the marketing budget will be drying up a little, real people will have had some time to do real people stuff in game, and sadly, and most importantly, the full horror show of the microtransactions will be bum rushing the customers. My coverage of the Division 2 will get more in-depth as and when I get a grip on what kind of a monster we are actually dealing with. This said, given the wide-scale industry shit-canery of 2018, my advice about this game remains the same as for any video game. Do not pre-order. If you do buy the game eventually, only buy it from somewhere that operates a decent returns policy, and make sure you check the specific returns policy on the day you buy it. Apologies in advance if this video comes across as uninspired, because I'm uninspired. Because the Division 2 is uninspired. It's like trying to discuss gaffer tape and making it sound interesting. Bad example. Gaffer tape is fucking awesome. I could talk about that all day, but you get my point. The Division 2 is not about creating an inspiring game. It's about recycling a customer group. It's a way to take a game away from millions of players, paste the number 2 on the title, give it back to us, and charge each and every one of us between $50 and $100. Let's not forget that the Division 1 had a very long development and a vast budget, a unique concept and a beautiful and iconic location. The Division 2, on the other hand, was thrown together in a couple of years, using Frankenstein assets and a slightly enhanced engine with a diminished budget. For all its faults, the Division 1 was a unique take on surviving an end-of-days scenario in New York City at Christmas. The Division 2 artistically pales by comparison. After all, have you ever heard of someone saying they're going to propose to their fiancée somewhere really special, like DC? No, you haven't. And that is for a good reason. The Division 2 reminds me of that story about Liam Gallagher looking for a shag at a party because he was bored. He went up to some random girl, looked her up and down, and with a sneer on his face uttered the immortal entreaty, "You'll do," then shagged her in the toilet and left. Right now, if I'm honest, that's how I feel about the Division 2. It'll do. Beyond that, there's nothing about it that gets my heart racing, with the possible exception of the microtransactions, paid stash space, and the fucking embarrassing levels of hype. But I am constantly being asked what my opinion is of the Division 2 so far, so as your dutiful and humble servant, here are my impressions of the circus. So let's quickly discuss the media, reviews and YouTube coverage so far. Well, the gang's all here. Ubisoft has done a superb job of making sure that there is an army of social media folk and YouTubers prepped and ready to rock to provide on-message promotional coverage. Fully briefed and prepared to help new and returning players with information, tips, advice, opinions, directions on what to think, and most importantly, telling everyone this game is super awesome and that everyone must buy it and feel super stoked whilst they do. Is a lot of coverage going to be biased? Of course it fucking is. It's a condition of being invited to the early access events that you promote the game. Those are Ubisoft's words, not mine. This is not my opinion. This is a condition of going. So don't think perhaps I should be sceptical of what the YouTubers are saying. You should think they only got invited to the preview events because they agreed to advertise the game. No secret is being made of this. So think infomercials.
When you put tiny hot dogs on a plate, grill, or other cooking device, because of their round shape, they roll all over the place, and many end up on the ground. What a waste!
Because that is probably the closest literal and legally applicable description. Look, I get it. A lot of YouTubers and streamers' careers are reliant on this game being a success, and Ubisoft is flicking money at them. They're going to work that fucking pole, and if the manager wants them to stay late, they will be staying late tonight, and their 7-year-old daughter at home can feed themselves. This is serious PR business, and business is fucking good. Unbiased reporting? We are unlikely to see much of that until about mid-summer. Ubisoft knows all too well that $1 spent on public relations is worth $1,000 spent on development. You can get a team of developers in for a whole weekend, spend tens of thousands on overtime and maybe not manage to fix a problem. But for only a few $1,000s and a couple of free eye trackers, you can absolutely guarantee that a bunch of YouTubers will make videos telling everyone that broken stuff is an opportunity and not a problem, and that the people complaining about it are negative, toxic, and harming the community. The Division 2 is launching accompanied by one of the biggest hype storms in recent history, and on top of this there's lots of legitimate independent content creators that primarily only cover the Division franchise, so they have a vested interest in the game succeeding. If you want impartial journalistic news coverage, you are in the wrong fucking place. Ubisoft builds statues to honour its content creators. Perhaps I should have just said that at the start and moved on. Because statues. So what about the weaponry and what I think of it so far? Well, it looks like it was a good year in the labour market if you're an out-of-work wizard. Or witch. I'm not sexist. The gear and weapon perks are suitably magical, sprinkled with glitter and fairy dust, and precisely what we have come to know and love from what is essentially World of Warcraft reskinned as a looter-shooter. From what I've seen so far, it's just like the Division 1, only they've mixed it up a bit, swapped some guns in, swapped some out, like any standard reboot. The weapons look and sound absolutely spectacular. But most other aspects of the weapons and gear are straight out of the Sword and Sorcery playbook. You know the drill. It looks and sounds like Black Hawk Down, but the game mechanics play like Krull. It's the usual nonsense like, your bullets travel faster if you're wearing magical boots, spell cooldowns reduce after a kill, every 4th bullet does extra damage if you're riding a unicorn, and 338 Lapua Magnum rounds start to run out of puff after about 100 meters. All that good old-fashioned stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with real gunplay or physics, and everything to do with Dungeons and Dragons. The drone looks fun. Frankly, I'm a fan of any skill that once deployed goes and does the work for you whilst I'm making a fucking sandwich. So sign me up for 10 of those. On a realism level though, anyone who owns a drone will tell you they can barely fly themselves for more than a few minutes without the batteries spunking themselves dry. But in the Division 2, this can apparently carry this, along with a few thousand rounds of this. Yeah, just don't think too hard about it or you'll just start laughing. And then cry a little too. The goo gun, or splooge cannon, or whatever the fuck they called it, another promising weapon. It was a legit military non-lethal weaponry research project that they abandoned for a very good reason. During testing, they kept almost suffocating people. If I got my hands on this, I would just run around spraying it in people's mouths and then stand around filming them with my smartphone whilst they thrashed around blowing tubes of pink rubber out of their noses and suffocating. I hope that's an achievement in the Division 2, especially the filming bit. What can I say? It's the Division 1 visuals, with Gandalf's arsenal, with Destiny's ultimate system. It will all work, won't win any awards for realism or originality, but it's basically the expected formula without too many surprises. The maps and the game environment, they have clearly chosen Washington because of the wide open spaces, because it's cheaper. When you have a dense urban terrain, you have to model absolutely everything. When you have more open plan terrain, you can just slap down a floor and fill it with a few cars and boxes, and the odd building if you're feeling generous. This is not an accident. Additive terrain models are easier and cheaper to build than something like New York. Densely packed cityscapes dictate a lot of modelling from the outset. Parks and wide open thoroughfares in Washington? Not so much. Some of the map areas I've seen look dense, intricate and interesting. Some areas though look like fucking car parks, with a few copy and paste assets thrown down. How much is which? We will see at launch, I guess. The story and factions frankly look like they were written by Chuck Palahniuk's evil doppelganger from a parallel universe. Perhaps I should qualify that statement, as my concept of evil is probably the exact opposite of what most people will assume. You know all that stuff that makes Chuck Palahniuk's writing so controversial, exciting and confrontational? Now imagine the opposite of that. You know, it's nice, family-friendly and unlikely to upset a 6-year-old, or even a Chinese censorship committee. The True Sons. Paramilitary warlords. Read conservative gun owners and ex-military personnel. The Hyenas. Opportunistic raiders. What, like raiders from Fallout 3? Which was also incidentally set in Washington, D.C. The Outcasts. Bitter survivors of a forced quarantine. Read people who are a bit upset about not getting enough food parcels and a comfy blanket. When the story is busy depoliticising itself, it takes a quick breather to lazily stereotype folk. This makes Escape from New York look like a visionary analysis of self-organising socio-political structures by fucking comparison. No offence to the writers, I'm sure they had a set of conditions placed on them more complex and exhaustive than a legal contract with a pharmaceutical company. Which is kind of ironic, because from what I've seen so far, a legal contract with a pharmaceutical company would probably have a more exciting plot than the Division 2. The story pretty much seems to be, there are some good people, go and help them. There are some bad people, go and kill them. There are some upset people, go and kill them too, probably. Actually, now I come to think of it, it's just like the Division 1. You are saving the population of a city by mercilessly gunning down and executing practically every last motherfucking person on site that is not completely and instantaneously 100% compliant. You're a death squad, basically. Only wearing slightly brighter clothes. / microtransactions. Look, maybe this will all flesh out when we play the actual game and see what's going on, but so far the factions seem to be conservative gun owners, slash those nasty military types that like and own guns, the criminal element, awful punky people who don't like society. It's basically what you get if you try and write a story that won't offend anyone in any market globally. Bland as fuck. Maybe it has surprises and twists in store. Let's hope so. People criticise Far Cry 5 for failing to address contemporary socio-political issues, and I defended the game on that front. I'm not sure I'm going to defend The Division 2. It's a fucking post-apocalyptic video game about a society functioning after the breakdown of formal government and social structures. If you fail to address the political issues, then it's just a bunch of cunts running around Washington with machine guns, shooting looters. Which sadly is probably the most likely way this story will pan out. I have currently seen no evidence of a real and challenging story, only stereotypes. Like I said, I don't blame the writers. They were probably told to write something entirely inoffensive, but it's still okay to take a pop at people who like guns. So what is my take on the DZ changes? It certainly looks like the Filthy Casuals won and the DZ concept is diluted. In fact, I would say it's almost gone. Now we essentially have mini battleground / arena areas. DZ, RIP. I might be a filthy casual myself who fails professionally at PvP, but I thought the vanilla DZ was a brilliant idea, even if I didn't like playing it very much. I don't really like facial tattoos, but it's not my business to stop other people from doing it. The original DZ used to be a giant lawless fuckhole with no rules, only the law of the jungle. Now it's going to be 3 miniaturized, graded PvP mini combat arenas with space for only 12 players in a relatively confined space where you need to fill in a form to go rogue. Am I the only person who sees the stupidity of the rogue system these days? Going rogue means you decide to say, fuck it, I'm not following the rules. I'm just going to start killing people. Clicking on buttons, interacting with terminals, putting in a written application form to go rogue does not make thematic sense. Christ, going rogue looks like more of a complicated administrative task than just playing by the rules. What the fuck is that about? To me, this looks like the DZ by name only. The DZ seems to have gone. This is really just a clever battleground now. These arenas might turn out to be a great crowd pleaser. I mean, they may be fucking brilliant. I'm just saying that the old school vanilla DZ appears to be gone for good. Just calling it the DZ does not make it the DZ. It's a small battleground now. Gear normalization is basically the standard in the Division 2. This means that everyone's gear is set to a basic mean average, reducing or eradicating any advantage you have from spending lots of time grinding to get better gear than the other guy in PvP. Great. 1 of 3 dark zones does not have normalization. Wonderful. That means that hardcore PvPers from the Division 1 get to utilise about 8% of the fucking game. Some of them, I know, are not happy about this. Personally, I think normalization makes a joke of grinding and effort. What is the point of farming the loot if it gets averaged out when the time comes to use it? I've got no PvP skills, so I always grind good gear to make up for that. It's a formula that works in so many other games, because ultimately, a good player with good gear beats everyone. There has also been concern expressed that there will be PvP and DZ exclusive loot, forcing PvE players into the DZ or locking them out of specific gear. I guess we'll have to see how this pans out when the game finally launches. I think my initial take on all the DZ changes are this. In an attempt to please everyone, they are in danger of doing nothing exciting at all. A lot of the hardcore PvP players are unhappy that the DZ is catering to filthy casuals like me, and a lot of the PvE players are concerned they might be forced to participate. I think they should have left the DZ how it was, just fixed the anti-cheat and hit registration, and made sure all loot was available in both the light and dark zones. Job done. Easy. Everyone is fucking happy. Snowdrop 2 engine memes are definitely incoming at some point in 2019. The narrative about the Snowdrop 2 engine is also starting to become contradictory and is desyncing with itself. We have very few hard facts about this engine, not even a Wikipedia entry. Yet we are routinely being sold the grand narrative that Ubisoft needed to make a sequel because the old engine had too many flaws. I'm sure I'm not the only person confused by all this. I've not managed to get any hard facts about the Snowdrop 2 engine, however I am constantly bombarded by the following claims. Ubisoft needed the upgraded engine to fix the problems of The Division 1. Therefore, they needed a completely separate sequel, which we incidentally have to pay for. It can model curved terrain. It looks better visually. And there lies the source of my befuddled confusion, because I remember the community complaining about a huge list of issues, and I checked this list and I couldn't find the following complaints anywhere. Customers were pissed off that they couldn't give Ubisoft another £100. There wasn't enough curved terrain. The colour palette of The Division was so last year and needs a refresh with better graphical fidelity. I didn't hear anyone make those complaints. However, almost constantly and universally, people complained about shitty servers, the now world-famous terrible hit registration, shitty microtransactions with broken algorithms, a lack of robust anti-cheat, weapon and armour set balancing, the overcomplicated damage and armour calculations. Now, I'm no expert, far from it. I'm a fucking idiot, so I'm going to wing this. But if I am not mistaken, shitty servers are shitty servers. Shitty hit registration was a combination of shitty netcode and shitty servers. Shitty microtransactions were the result of shitty business practices. Shitty anti-cheat was shitty design decisions, followed by laziness, and then penny pinching. Game balancing and damage calculations were just the result of deliberate design choices. I have yet to fully understand how the introduction of Snowdrop 2 is magically going to fix all of the problems that people actually complained about. Everyone seems to have blindly accepted this narrative that Snowdrop 2 is going to magically fix everything, and that it's also the justification for a sequel. Basically, all of the selling points of the Snowdrop 2 engine, which is the justification for making a second game, shit-canning New York and recycling the community and making us pay for a sequel, all of these selling points do not map onto the actual problems we had in The Division 1. Sure, it can do all of this amazing new stuff, but that is not the same stuff that fucked up The Division 1. Look, nobody moped around The Division 1, grumbling about lighting fidelity and a lack of curved walls. Nobody sat around the base of operations complaining that all of the flat walls were ruining the fucking feng shui by being too flat and flat in the wrong way. The one thing they got right in The Division 1 was the beautiful modelling of New York City. Most of us will never forget it for as long as we play video games. None of us will ever grumble that it needed more non-linear terrain and curves. I'm sure the Snowdrop 2 engine is perfectly lovely. I just fail to see a logical connection between it and the problems from The Division 1 being magically fixed. So for now, I'm going to assume we're probably going to have the same set of problems in The Division 2. I guess we should talk about the anti-cheat. I need to know more about the anti-cheat before giving it a full verdict, but getting out my crystal ball and whilst trying to remain open-minded and optimistic, I'm going to lean towards the conclusion that the anti-cheat will surprise nearly everyone and turn out to be utterly fucking useless. Anti-cheat is an arms race, and to win that arms race you need to build the game engine from the ground up with anti-cheat in mind. And we know from years of hard experience that Ubisoft does not give any fucks about anti-cheat, unless it causes public relations issues. It will all come down to how they built the Division 2, because unless they got that right first, slapping easy anti-cheat on top is going to be like putting makeup on top of gangrene. I'm sorry if I seem pessimistic, but in the Division 1, they initially kept all player information client-side. And in the eyes of some people, this was an act of such brazen and unforgivable stupidity that it alone should have been grounds for a refund. Keeping data client-side is the equivalent of a bank leaving all its money in a box out on the street with a sign saying, "Take what you need, and we trust you will write your name down on the notepad with how much you took." If the game is in itself insecure, slapping on a bit of easy anti-cheat is just lipstick on a fucking pig. We live in an age where people can use cheats that don't even run on their gaming rig. It's an arms race. The technology advances quickly. Whilst easy anti-cheat has a good track record of catching these evolving technologies eventually, slapping anti-cheat onto insecure games has a track record of not catching cheats particularly quickly. My point is that catching cheats after 3 to 6 months in a world where cheating software is evolving on a month-by-month basis means that from the player's perspective, we're still going to be constantly playing with cheaters. Catching people eventually is only good for the publisher. They ban people and the cheater has to buy another copy of the game. Anti-cheat is only good for the player if cheaters are caught instantaneously, or at least very quickly. Then there is also the thorny issue of support. You don't just slap on anti-cheat and then fuck off down the pub. It takes a small group of people to keep cheats off an old-school competitive Battlefield server round the clock in real time, and that was a constant losing battle. How many people are hired by Ubisoft expressly to work on the anti-cheat across all their servers around the clock? 100? 200? 500? Probably nobody. Without dedicated support 24/7, good luck with that. Slapping on easy anti-cheat alone has not got a track record for producing cheat-free gaming environments, because catching people eventually is absolutely not the same as a cheat-free environment. It's nice that they did it, and by it, I mean do the absolute base minimum required of any video game. But until I see more information and see people being banned quickly, it's a PR stunt. Scum rolled out easy anti-cheat in week 1, and that's a small indie game. I'll keep an open mind though, because they're wise to be tight-lipped and secretive about their plans. But from personal experience, anyone losing their shit and celebrating the end of cheating in the Division based on this news is prematurely ejaculating. If you lived in a town where anyone could go out, rape, kill and steal with impunity for 3 to 6 months without a chance of them getting caught, would you say you lived in a crime-free zone? Or would you say you lived in a murderous fucking shithole? I rest my case. Anti-cheat only improves the player experience if it works in real time. The full horror of the microtransactions have yet to be unleashed on us. We all know the drill by now. The 2018 AAA tactic is launch a game with lots of hype, wait for the reviews to come out, wait for the launch sales to clear. After about a month, cry havoc and unleash the dogs of microtransactional war. Pay a couple of clowns to screech on social media that it's only cosmetic items. Job's a good 'un. I heard a rumour that the first wave of pedo caches arrive around late April. Think I'm full of shit? Well, Ubisoft shipped Far Cry 5 review copies without the microtransactions being live, apparently, then activated them after the reviews were published. Then there is the stash space controversy with Ubisoft selling stash space with pre-orders. I can't confirm or deny what the fuck is going on with this at the moment. Ubisoft has reserved the right to change content in pre-order bundles without notice, and stash space is still listed in some sales material and pulled from other info in some territories. One of two things will happen. They are selling stash space in-game for money, which is shitty, or they are not doing it. In a way, this is worse, because if they're not going to do it, that means we paid for it and we're not going to get it. Think about it. This is a lose-lose situation, however they decide to play it in the end. It was a dirty move from the start, and I'm surprised they actually tried it on. I'm afraid the information war has been lost, I'm sorry to say. One thing I've watched very closely in the build-up to the Division 2 launch is the ecology of the content creation community. I barely know of any content creators who are not now in some way beholden to Ubisoft or affiliated with a group or network that is. There are a few toxic outliers like myself, and we are firmly treated as lepers. The filthy, toxic, unclean, who nobody should touch if they value their relationship with the Ubisoft community developers. The subreddit now censors to order for the CMs. I'm banned from posting videos, and it's been publicly stated that posting one of my videos risks the person being labelled as a co-conspirator and censored by association. It's genuinely Orwellian shit. It's actually quite a sad state of affairs, but the average new naive player of the Division is going to be blissfully unaware that a large proportion of what they see in the public domain is most likely to be corporately influenced at best. Most likely completely run by Ubisoft or PR partners. One thing I can say for certain, if this game launches and it's a pile of shite, there will be an army of content creators blindly defending it for at least the first 6 months after launch. And they will make token concessions to admitting big problems if Ubisoft plan to fix them. Everything else will be embargoed. Look, I'm not saying for a second that The Division 2 is definitely going to be a shit game. It might surprise me and turn out to be a masterpiece like Red Dead Redemption 2. Said no one ever. Okay, let's roll that one back a bit and start again. The Division 2 might turn out to be a good game. I'm just saying, if you're looking for your answers on YouTube, look for reviews from people outside of this community with a history of being independent, impartial, and not working with game publishers. Off the top of my head, Jim Sterling, worth a buy. I can't really think of anyone else. Don't trust my judgment about this game, but equally, don't trust the advice of someone who's just come back from smooching at Ubisoft's head office. Use your common fucking sense. So let's talk pros and cons. Cons. It's a live service nightmare designed primarily to extract our money. It will roll out microtransactions after the reviews are published. They will probably try and sell loot crates via a mobile app. Lots of unique features of the PvP are watered down. We're going to hear the words stoked, excited and awesome so much over the coming months that we might literally start to feel physically sick. Pros. It's a video game. Some developers and YouTubers will get a wage packet out of it. I can play it with the few friends I have that haven't quit the Division for good. At least it's not a mobile game yet. I don't want anyone to think I'm biased about the Division 2. It's really nothing personal. I'm pessimistic about nearly all AAA big budget releases this year. At least the Division has an existing fan base. Albeit a cynical and largely disillusioned one, but at least they have history, which is an advantage that games like Anthem do not have. The community is largely going to break down into a few notable groups. People who felt so stung by the Division 1, they'd rather fuck a hornet's nest than buy the sequel. People who are going to buy this game regardless. everyone in the floating marketplace who might buy this game if the hype is real enough. And at this point, I have to say, I'm surprised by the number of people I know who have tried this game and said it's not as bad as they thought it would be. Hardly a glowing review, but it's positive news at least. People who were expecting this to be bad have been pleasantly surprised. A very important thing to keep in mind with Ubisoft is what they are not saying. They have not discussed if this game is moving over to the pay-to-play model of other titles, where we will be expected to shell out money every year to access new content or effectively get fucked. They've not discussed the details of the microtransactions, pedo caches, stash space sale, and if they are continuing to use manipulative algorithms to throttle loot drops in gambling mechanics. When you invest in this game, you don't really have much of a Scooby what you are committing your money to. In 12 months' time, you might find yourself forced to either invest or divest of this game. And therein is the catch. I see lots of mouths moving, and all I hear is blah, blah, fucking blah. Ubisoft are dodging some of the most important questions about The Division 2. And how much should we trust Ubisoft? Well, here's an example. The claim that all the DLC will be free has over time gradually transformed into the DLC episode content is free for the first year only. The rest of the extra content comes in a separate season pass, which you have to pay for. And the free stuff you get later than everyone else. I'll let you be the judge, but that is not what I consider sticking to your word. The Division 2 is product. It's going to be the Rainbow Six Siege business model strapped together with a semi-Wildlands game. Essentially what I'm saying is, it'll do. Many of us will buy it just because we want to see if they will deliver the dream they never quite managed to finish in the first game. They won't. We know that deep down. But a lot of us just have to put our hand on that grill to see if it's hot. And we will get burned. What can I really say? You know, it's a game. It has buttons. You press them and sorcery and magic squirts out of your gun. It looks like Tom Clancy and plays like Harry Potter. It will cost a lot of money. Be rammed full of microtransactions and kiddie gambling. Lots of stuff won't work properly. And lots of stuff won't get fixed either. And just as before, like clockwork, Haggis and Yanis will sit down in front of the camera on State of the Game and tell us that they are listening and that they're working on it. And the deja vu will flood over us, like we're starring in our own little version of Groundhog Day. And a moment will come when we facepalm in despair and self-loathing and think to ourselves, "Oh, fuck. Did I really sign myself up for another round of this shit?" But for now, good luck and happy hunting.
Can't wait to see what the future brings. I will see you soon.
Bye.